Too many buttons to hit. Guys, as you know, I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports just aren't sporting like I want them to. FanDuel, however, keeps me in sports whenever I want and wherever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every single day all summer long. Head on over to FanDuel.com/UCSS and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
And with that, we are thrilled to welcome in Trey Wingo to the show, one of the smartest guys around when it comes to analyzing football. Looks like he's joining us from the golf course. How you doing today, Trey?
I'm good. If I'm joining you from the course, I'm breaking all kinds of rules. I'm wearing a collarless shirt, so no, I'm just out for roll. I would be kicked off my course pretty quickly if I showed up in this T-shirt.
When you're Trey Wingo, I feel like you could break all the rules on a golf course, though, Trey. I feel like there's no dress code when it comes to reaching that level.
Well, there's a lot of second balls I take, that's for sure. But that's
Well, Trey, thank you so much for joining us today. Very interested and curious to get some of your thoughts on the Browns as they get ready for the upcoming season. But any Browns discussion we have this year starts and ends with Deshaun Watson. So I'm curious to know, are you confident that Deshaun can get back to his Houston Texan ways? No? Easy.
No.
Why not?
Why would you be? Well, why would you be? I guess my question is, what has he shown you since he's been there that's going to make you think that he will? I'm not saying he can't, but you asked me if I was confident. And I've seen 1.5 seasons of him in a Cleveland Browns uniform, and it has looked bad. They made the playoffs because of Joe Flacco and a defense. And they gave Deshaun Watson, at the time, the most guaranteed money in the history of the NFL. It's going to go down as the worst contract ever. And the only way they justify that contract is if Deshaun Watson plays the way he did when he played for the Texans. I have absolutely no idea if he will. He has the potential, and he has the team around him to do it, but he has shown us nothing in those 1.5 seasons with the Browns that would lead you to believe that he is going to return to that form. He can, but you ask me if I'm confident, and I have no reason to be confident right now.
Trey, there's when you look at the overall, I guess, performance of Deshaun Watson, I can't remember a player in the history of the game, especially at quarterback, who would have fallen so far from a point where he was at one point in time a top 5 quarterback, borderline top 5, at least top 10 quarterback, that would have fallen off. That would have fallen off without having some major injury or some major issue physically.
I mean, he had a major issue. Let's just be honest about that. I mean, he had a major issue. And those things tend to affect you psychologically as much as anything else. And I guess the question is, how much is that still a part of this?
And so I guess if you get to a point where you figure he does figure it out psychologically, you did say that you think that there's a possibility he can get there. Physically, yeah. I don't see anything wrong with him, but the psychological part, if he puts that behind him, is that a path to him becoming the guy he used to become, or not even that, but a competent quarterback?
Yeah, look, I mean, just to sort of validate what you're saying here, I can tell you with great certainty that in the 2017 draft, the Chiefs had Deshaun rated almost as high as they had Patrick Mahomes. They had Patrick Mahomes first on their board, but if they weren't able to get Patrick, they were going to go after Deshaun. And I feel pretty confidently that if Deshaun Watson had gone to Kansas City instead of Houston, we might be looking at a very different quarterback. Where you go matters so much in the NFL. And going from the disaster that the Texans were after the 2019 season. I mean, they had a 24-0 lead on the road and were outscored 51-7. Like, they were outscored 51-7 after that. And then, of course, it all fell apart, and the Texans became a joke, and that scarred him as well, I'm sure. So, where you go matters. Like, if he had gone to a different situation, he might be looked at very differently now. It's all there for him still. It's just a matter of where he is. Like, Ben Crenshaw's line about being a good golfer is, I'm 6 inches away from being a really good golfer, and that's the difference between my left ear and my right. Okay, there's no debating. There's no debating Deshaun's physical skills. Any issues Deshaun has have to do with how he's processing everything, and I understand that it's a lot to process. But for him to get back let me put it this way, for him to validate the contract, he's got to figure that part of it out.
Trey, last year the Browns had a really good offense under Kevin Stefanski. This year they go out and they get Ken Dorsey. How do you think his input to the offense affects the Browns' overall offense? And are you in agreement that Kevin Stefanski should still call plays this season?
Yeah, I'm a big Kevin Stefanski fan. I think he's done an amazing job. And the problem is, like Nick Sirianni, when he got the Eagles job, he started to call plays, and then he realized, well, I can't really be a head coach if I'm calling all the plays, and it was outside of his bandwidth. It might be inside Kevin's bandwidth. Ken Dorsey kind of got scapegoated last year for what went on in Buffalo, and as it turns out, there might have been a lot more issues besides Ken Dorsey with the Buffalo Bills and their reliance on Josh to do everything. They did run the ball a little more after Ken left, and I think that obviously if you can get Nick Chubb back and running, you have to rely on him a lot. But I think Kevin has the bandwidth to do both things, and I think that he needs to make sure he sort of defaults to his best judgment in the situation and not just say, okay, I brought this guy in to run the offense, I'll let him run the offense. Because at the end of the day, what happens, wins and losses, they're going to be on Kevin Stefanski. They're not going to be on Ken Dorsey, and he has to do whatever he feels like he needs to do to put them in the best position to win.
When you look at the AFC North as a whole, Trey, it's a division that we've said on this show many times we could see all four teams winning and all four teams finishing in last place. We think it's the best division of football, and frankly, it's not that close. Heading into the 2024 season, how do you foresee this division playing out in terms of, is there a cream of the crop, or are all four of these teams that tightly packed together? You could see it falling in the same fashion we can, where it's really anyone's game.
Well, I mean, the Ravens were the number one seed last year, and they hosted the AFC Championship game, and they fell to Kansas City. So they lose a couple of players. They bring in Derrick Henry. I would default to them as the number one team in that division, and then I think you guys are right there. Cincinnati. Cincinnati is really interesting to me this year because it's been a weird offseason, right? I mean, the whole Jamar Chase contract thing, and then Mike Brown doing the most Mike Brown thing ever, saying, well, it's not really time to negotiate now. It's time to focus on football. And like, well, why didn't you negotiate before? Like, that's the most Bengals thing ever. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. Joe Burrow's offseason has me a little concerned. Okay? I'm just throwing it out there. Like Bill Parcells used to have this line, never be a star QB. In other words, don't be a star, just be a quarterback. And Joe's out there. He went to that fashion show in Paris. And, he's gone full Eminem, Method Man, whatever, with his hair and all this kind of stuff. And look, Joe is an amazing athlete, but my biggest concern for Joe is, can he stay healthy? And I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of little things, that are sort of under the surface with Cincinnati, and they're little things now, but it feels like these might be things that boil up and become much bigger things. Let's just say if they get off to a slow start.
Trey, here's a great thing. How do you see Pittsburgh? For me, they here in Cleveland, they freak me out a little bit because they always seem to be like 8-8. Like they went to the playoffs last year. Nobody remembers. You got Justin Fields. You got Russell Wilson. My worst nightmare is that they figure out Russell Wilson isn't it, and then they bring Justin Fields in at the end of the season. And they get things rolling with the run game, and run play action. Where do you see things going with the Steelers? Are they more of a playoff team or more of a just nice story last year?
Well, I think that obviously they had to improve on their quarterback play from last year. They had that stretch where they couldn't score. And obviously, Kenny Pickett is a great example of be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. He didn't want to compete for a job in Pittsburgh. Now he's buried behind Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. He's not going to see if he had a chance. If he just wanted to compete, he might have played. The Justin Fields thing I think is very interesting. Going back to what I said about Deshaun, where you go matters. Mm-hmm. Look at the situation Caleb Williams is walking into in Chicago. You have Keenan Allen, You have DJ Moore. You have Cole Kmet. You have DeAndre Swift. You have Roma Dunes that you just drafted as well. And you have a Bears defense that's a top 10 defense in the NFL now. Well, Justin Fields, if he walked into that situation, Justin Fields would probably still be the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. He walked into Velus Jones and Darnell Mooney and the worst defense in the history of the Bears franchise. Like, that matters. Grade what you see out of Justin Fields. I'm curious to see what Mike Tomlin and company, they have real offensive weapons in Pittsburgh. They have a receiving core. They have a running game. I'm really curious to see if Justin does push Russell, because, it doesn't Steelers anything. It's the Broncos that are paying Russell $30+ million. They've got him on the league minimum. So there's no financial push for them to play Russell Wilson. And they've got Justin on a short-term contract as well. So it might be in their best interest to see, okay, maybe Justin is the way to go because of what the future might bring as opposed to what it might be with Russell.
Trey, speaking of defenses, last year the Browns defense was top tier. Do you think that that's something that they can do again this year? And how do you explain the home versus away, where they were great at home and then away they struggled?
Yeah, the splits were crazy last year. Like, Indianapolis lights them up on the road, right? And we can talk about some of the ridiculous calls at the end of that game, which really didn't make any sense, but they were still going up and down the field on them. It was crazy how much better they were. What was it? I think under 14 at home and over 31 on the road last year. I think they're still going to be good because Myles Garrett is still there and the rest of that unit is still intact. But they do need to find a more consistent level of play. They need to level out. They need to be. They don't need to be great on the road. They just don't need to be terrible on the road. And they've just got to get more consistent when they leave the dog pound, because when they play at home, they're almost impossible to figure out.
Trey, who do you think ends up having a better season this year? Deshaun and the Browns or Aaron Rodgers and the Jets?
That's really a great question. I said this last year about the Jets, and I'll say it again. It should work, but history suggests it won't. I mean, we're talking about the Jets, okay? They always find a way to screw it up. So, whatever it is, and I know, Aaron got hurt after 4 plays. But that's what happens. Like, it should have worked with Brett Favre when he went to the Jets, right? They started out great and then fell apart down the stretch. I have a buddy of mine who's a Jets fan, and his line is, whomever the Jets pick, I know it's the wrong pick because the Jets made the pick. So I would say, it should be Aaron Rodgers with the Jets based on the team that they have around him. But that division is no joke either, except for the Patriots, which is kind of a weird thing to say considering it was the exact opposite for all these years. The division was a joke, and then there were the Patriots. And now it's the exact other way around. I would probably go with Deshaun because I've seen that team cohesively work. The Jets find a way to mess it up all the time. It should work. It absolutely should work. But I got to see it before I'll believe it.
You bring up the Jets. You talked about Deshaun Watson. This is the greatest hits right here. I contest that right now we're living in an era like with Michael Jordan, right? Like, so Jordan played, all the greats never won. Ewing never won. Barkley never won. Right now we're playing in an era where if you play in the AFC, you have to play some of your best football just to sniff the playoffs. I think right now we might be living in the golden era of that position and just how hard it is to win a championship in the AFC.
Well, we are, because 15 exists. I mean, let's just be honest about it, right? You can have your other quarterbacks that you like, and you can do that. I'll take 15, and I have the receipts. Yeah. In the Super Bowl era, there are only 3 quarterbacks that can claim multiple Super Bowl MVPs and multiple regular season MVPs. Tom Brady, I think, has 5 Super Bowl MVPs and 3 regular season MVPs in his 22-year career. Joe Montana had 2 regular season MVPs and 2 Super Bowl MVPs in his 17-year career. Patrick Mahomes has been a starter for 6 years, and he has 2 regular season MVPs and 3 Super Bowl MVPs in 6 seasons as a starter. So we're talking about the outlier of all outliers. Somebody posted something yesterday. Since 2001, there have been 125 instances where a team was down in the fourth quarter of a playoff game by 7 points or less, and they needed to score 7 or more points to either win the game or send the game into regulation. Tom Brady is about 50% in those situations. Drew Brees is about 40% in those situations. Only one quarterback since 2001 is perfect in those situations, and that's Patrick Mahomes. He's 7 out of 7 in those situations. And that even includes the 2021 AFC Championship game when they eventually lost in overtime because he needed the 3 points to get them to overtime. The point being is, when the Super Bowl was in Vegas last year, I said, what's the number one rule in Vegas? Never bet against the house, right? The Chiefs. The Chiefs are the house because of Patrick Mahomes. They had one touchdown drive in that Super Bowl. When was that touchdown drive? When they needed a touchdown to win the game. Okay. The only other touchdown they had was after a muff punt. He threw it to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who amazingly caught it. That was the headline. He actually caught a pass. And that was fine, but they were down. Niners kicked a field goal in overtime. They had to have a touchdown to win the game. And that MFer said, follow me. I'm driving the bus. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it. The coldest thing I've ever seen any athlete do was last January before the final game of the regular season against the Chargers. And this was the Chiefs' worst year. They led the league in drops and all kinds of issues with receivers. It was their worst season statistically in terms of wins and losses. And Patrick texted his family on his text chain, his mom, his dad, Brittany, his wife, and said, you can look this up. This is honest to God truth. I've decided we're going to win the Super Bowl. Not that I think we can get there. Not that I think we have a chance. I've decided, as if nobody else has a say in the matter.
That's crazy.
Turns out he was right.
Yeah, he's rarely wrong. Trey, we appreciate you joining us. We'll get you out of here on this one, but I am currently sitting in a seat that is occupied by Jay Crawford twice a week, and I know you worked with Jay back in there. I was hoping you had a story of Jay Crawford you could share with us that we could give him shit for when he comes back.
Well, listen, I enjoyed my time with Jay. We didn't get to work together much, but when we did, we always had fun. I will tell you this. Jay's love of Cleveland and passion for Cleveland sports is unmatched by anyone I've ever known. And I actually respect the hell out of him for that, because that has not been an easy undertaking all these many years. And he has worn that banner and been such a pro-Cleveland sports guy for as long as I've known him. I really, literally tip of the cap to Jay for that.
Awesome. Well, Trey, we thank you so much for joining us here on the Ultimate Cleveland
Salute.
Sports Show. Enjoy the rest of your walk, and hopefully next time you are on the course, you hit him straight.
That'll be in about 2 hours. Can't wait. See you guys.